whiskey and 1.5s.
And we're back on the Jeff Poor Show here on WVNN. Join us now. We have a special guest, the very first guest on the Jeff Poor Show. It's Congressman Robert Aderholt from Alabama's 4th Congressional District. Congressman, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Jeff, it's great to be on with you.
So, Congressman, I guess we're in this stalemate with the shutdown. Where are we at? Is there any end in sight?
Well, the last information that I'm received, of course, as most of you have been keeping up with it, we're still at a stalemate. There's been some overtures, I think, of maybe going toward a steel wall as opposed to a concrete wall, but I don't see of anything that's really of significant has really come down on any of this. So I think it's going to be well into the several more days, another week or two before we see any solution to this. And of course, it could be longer.
Yeah, when you say a few days or weeks, I've heard a matter of months that there's no reason for any side to budge. What could that look like? What might bring, what might make cooler heads prevail?
Well, the one thing that makes this shutdown so different from all the rest is usually you have several issues on the table, and they're able to finally say, okay, we're going to have to find a compromise on this and find some common ground. So we'll let you win on these 3 or 4 issues, and we'll win on these 3 or 4 issues, and then we'll try again to come back when we do an appropriation bill next year and try to get the things that we didn't get. This time, it's really only about the wall, and it's either you win, either one side wins and one side loses, and vice versa. So it's one of those things that can't be on and off. It can't be black and white. It can't be a yes and no. So it's one of those real dichotomies here that they're dealing with, and that's why I think that one side is going to have to give in for there to be a real end solution to this.
Yeah, and do you think that $5 billion number is the hard number? Do you think maybe if there's any wiggle room, it could be with that $5 billion?
No, I think the president indicated, I think that he'll say, bring me back a counteroffer. I think right now the Democrats are saying not one penny more than the 1.6 billion that or 1.3 billion, whatever. I think there was a dispute about that actual number. So the Democrats are saying there's absolutely no way that we're going to give a single penny above that amount. I think Nancy Pelosi did say $1. She would do $1, but other than that, she would not go any more. But that would be a non-starter. And then the president. So the president, my understanding, we're actually the Republicans are meeting late tomorrow, with Vice President Pence and also with the Director of Homeland Security and the Secretary of Homeland Security, and we're hopefully going to get another update tomorrow on what's going on. But I think the president would be willing to say, okay, let's do 3.5, 4, 4.5. I don't know what the number is, but right now, my understanding is the Democrats have not come back with a counteroffer.
Well, what's your feeling on, there's been some talk that Trump might do this on his own, declare a state of emergency or national emergency, and use the military to do it. Do you think that, is that leverage, or would that be ill-advised?
Well, usually you don't do those things unless it's really in a dire situation. But of course, a lot of the information I think we're going to get tomorrow night is how dire this situation is right now on the southern border, and no question it is a national security issue, and it's something that's one thing the president is required to do, is to make sure that he keeps the defense of the country. So that's within his purview of what he has to do. Now, I'm hopeful that this can be settled legislatively so that you don't have to go to an extreme measure like this. But I think the president has the grounds, and he probably has, as far as from the security standpoint, that you need, and especially in the rumors that there could be other caravans that are on their way toward the southern border, that he can make a very good case. And so that would be something, I guess, would be end up going to the courts, and it would finally be decided there.
Now, with this whole
Now, with the whole government shutdown going on, there is a possibility that the borders may close entirely, like just completely close borders. Do you think that would be a good or a bad move for Trump to do?
Well, certainly, I know that there's a lot of people that go across the borders on work visas and work permits, and I know there's day laborers down in those regions. And being from Alabama, we're not as familiar with that, and I'm not as familiar with it. But I know that there are workers that go across the border daily
Right.
that help with some of the regions, the regions across the border, and so that would be where I see the real big issue would be. Now, the president, as you say, has threatened to close the border if he doesn't see some final resolution to that. And I think probably a part of that is he's hoping to put some pressure on the Democrats to try to make sure that they don't that they will come to the table.
Well,
it's go ahead.
I was going to say, just kind of we're kind of running out of time here, but now you're in the minority. What is your role in all of this as in the minority part? I know you've been in the minority before. You kind of have an understanding of the way Congress works, but what do House Republicans do? Are they just kind of relegated to the sidelines, or do you have I guess you have a seat at the table, but what kind of tactics or whatever it is? What is your role in this whole situation?
Well, obviously we operate as a majority rule in the House, and that's the way it has always operated. But at the same time, what is I think everyone has to keep in mind that there is about 30 Democrats that are currently in the House that Trump carried their districts, and that Trump is still very quite popular in their area. So they have to be careful about not just going with the Democrat majority and what Nancy Pelosi wants to on every vote. So you take those 30 with the Republicans that we have, and I say 30, maybe 32 Republican or Democrat districts that Trump carried. But you take those, and then it really puts the Democrats into a sometimes in particular squeeze when they can't get the votes. So, we just started the session, so this is yet to play out. But if I was in a district and I was a Democrat, and Trump carried the district pretty overwhelmingly, then I would have to be, I would be very careful in how I would make sure that I didn't just poke Trump in the eye.
Do you think the electoral politics are kind of getting in play? I know we're about to hit a presidential election cycle, but is there a path forward for Republicans to get back to Congress as soon as this next election?
Well, I see that there's a distinct possibility that after the next election, I think Trump is going to do well in the next election. And I think that he is, all of these districts that supported Trump last time, I think by and large they're going to support him again. So I think the Democrats have to be very careful. They do not have as big a majority as that we had a month ago before we lost control, or last week before the change of control of Congress. So they've got a lesser majority than we had, and of course we lost it in this last election. So they have to be very careful. But presidential politics and politics is always in the play when it comes to anything that we deal with, because people, especially in the House, we run every 2 years, and we know that we're held accountable by the people that sent us to Washington.
Well, there's just a sense that the Democratic Party, to me, has this tendency to overreach. And do you think the possibility they would impeach Trump and send it to the Senate, was that just talk during the campaign, or is there a sense that might be coming later on in this Congress?
No, I think that's entirely a possibility. Now you have quite a few members of the Democrat majority that would do an impeachment tomorrow if they could, and they felt like they could move forward. You have then other members of the Democrat majority that feel like if they move too fast on this, then they're going to themselves be beat at next election cycle. So that's where they have to be very careful, and they have to be very calculated in how they move forward on this. But I would say that that they've already introduced. You probably have already heard that last week they introduced articles of impeachment against the president. Now that's when it's introduced, that doesn't mean that it's moving forward. That just means the bill has been introduced. It'll be up to the speaker to decide when that would be brought to the floor. But the first week we were back, the Democrats introduced an impeachment resolution.
Well, it just seems like Republicans might even welcome an impeachment resolution, just because I as history shows, it didn't work out so well for the Republicans in the 1990s. I don't know. Do you get the sense that the people are pining for it, or that maybe that's, at least from Pelosi's perspective, she's a little reluctant to pull the impeachment trigger?
Yeah, no, I think it would be very detrimental to the Democrats at this point if they move just forward with impeachment. And you've seen just the last week, comments were made by some of her colleagues that just got elected, and how they've just been, and it's been very, I think, detrimental to the Democrats. So she realizes that she's going to put in jeopardy a lot of her Democrat colleagues that voted for her, but yet they were in districts that voted for Trump, and those votes have to be very careful to move forward. And of course, it would be very detrimental to bring forth an impeachment proceedings and then fail. So it's just she's in a very precarious situation, and I think she's got to wait to see how things evolve over the next 6 months and over the next year before she would even think about bringing it up. But I could see before the end of the term that they may get enough pressure in the Democrat caucus to say that, we've got to move with it, and she may get pressure from her Democrat colleagues.
Well, and then there's also, I guess, this Mueller probe. If he has a report, they've been talking about it ending for a year now. Does that maybe kind of force things? That's what the Democrats are hoping for, that there'll be something in that report that'll come out that will push them over the edge, that they will feel like that they've got the votes for it. Right, and they got to act on it, or if they don't, then they upset their base. But to me, in presidential political cycles, the base kind of gets to call a lot of the shots, and that might cause a little bit of an overreach, but that's just the way it seems. That's exactly what will happen. And then if you see that happen, then you will see the Republicans take back control in less than 2 years. Well, we'll get you out of here on this, kind of bring it back home to Alabama. Is there, I guess the big compromise topic was that the Democrats got the House or the Senate, that maybe they could look at some kind of infrastructure bill, and maybe that would be the big grand bargain. And do you foresee anything happening, or are we just kind of going to be at this sort of kabuki theater of politics right now? I think we're going to see a lot of, quite honestly, just a lot of games being played over the next 2 years in this administration. Not with the president, but with this administration of Pelosi and Schumer. And of course, he's not majority leader in the Senate, but he does still have a lot of control in the Senate because of the Senate rules. Right. But under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi, I think you're going to see a lot of just back and forth and, not working with the president. And so I think they'll be at loggerheads on just numerous issues. Hopefully we can get, the appropriation bills done. But, there's a lot to be said when, bills that are bad bills, that they don't go anywhere. So you'll see the House propose a lot of bad legislation, but it won't go anywhere in the Senate, and it won't go anywhere because the president won't sign it. So a lot of times I tell people there's one thing worse than when you have a log jam and nothing's getting done, and that's when you pass bad legislation. So yeah. I don't see a lot of bad legislation being passed. Maybe not a lot of good legislation will be passed either, but at least there won't be a lot of bad legislation, just because I think the two sides will be at loggerheads on so many of these issues. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot of these kind of shutdowns we saw at the early part of this decade. Congressman, I want to thank you for coming on my show today. Oh, well, congratulations on the show. It's good to be with you, and I look forward to being with you in the future. All right, there you have it. Congressman Aderholt from Alabama's 4th Congressional District, just to our south here. I think we're looking at shutdowns. If you remember when the Republicans took Congress in 2010, we were always having these last-hour deals just to keep the lights on in the government, and that's just the nature of divided government in America. When you have two different, parties ruling, then they're gonna go down to the last minute. This is Jeff Poore sitting in on WVNN News Talk 770 AM 92.5 FM.
It's the Jeff Poore Show.